question it. And so I shook her hand and she never let go of it. And we just kept going around the room like this and finally out the door. We did that wonderful crazy woman in the jungle thing when she was swinging and doing her, you know. The punchline was that Ruth Buzzy came through swinging and she said, okay, I got a good one here. This one's yours or something, I forgot how it went. Very funny, very cute. Never wanted to do anything else. I was in high school and I would get up and sing at an assembly and I don't remember if anybody asked me to or not, but I was doing it and I was scared to death and I would get up and hold on to my coattails and my hands didn't move, they just held onto my coat. And I would sing and my friends would say, oh, come on, Jones, get off, what are you doing? You know, and they'd make fun of me, but it didn't stop me. I just kept going. Then I was Doug McClure was ahead of me in school, and I couldn't wait for him to get out of there so I could take over and be in the senior play. And I was in the senior play a year before I was a senior. And but he was great. And then I got in there. I got a chance to do some of that. That's what I love to do. Around that time when I was in high school, or shortly thereafter, living in the Palisades, in my parents' house, with my sister. And she's a little bit older than I am, and she went to see a play, and it was Harvey Korman in the little theater in the Palisades, and she was an actress as well. I think she was in it or in the production somehow, and so they became very good friends, and they kind of went together a little bit, you know. And so that's how I met Harvey, and I was her little brother, you know. And then he was going to Chicago to do something, and then he was going to go on to New York, and we weren't going to see him for a while. So when I went to New York, and I was asked to be on the Patty Page show called The Big Record. And I don't remember having a hit record then, but I think it was because my father's hit record, but I was a singer and doing fairly well, so she had both my father and myself on doing our records. So I looked Harvey up, and we actually double dated. And but he was working in a restaurant, waiting tables, just being an actor. And he was a very well-studied actor. He was a Shakespearean student and had been in many Shakespeare plays. And so I remember him getting, well, later on he threw it up to me because here I was. I wasn't hurting for money at the time, and I was in New York, and I said, so we went out to dinner. And I stuck him with the bill. I just didn't mean to. It just happened that way. He never forgot it. Every time I saw him for years, he stuck me with the. So he was just a gem of a person. What a great thing it says for Carol and her whole team to make that choice, because they had a winner there. Both of those guys. I mean, they were the modern day Laurel and Hardy. They would never be able to get through a scene without breaking each other up. And even Carol, I mean, she tried as hard as she could to keep a straight face, and it just didn't work. I would have loved to have been around more when they were on the road together. I would love to see more of those shows, because just the two of them on stage probably ad-libbing most of the time. I didn't know Tim until later on. I would see him at parties or whatever, usually with Harvey. And then he's another terrific, real, uncomplicated person. You'd think he'd be complicated, but he's really not. He's just so. And as I say, at Harvey's funeral, it was the most wonderful way to say goodbye to somebody. and he made it. He told funny stories. I mean, they had funny running gags together, play jokes on each other, and they were all funny within themselves. But then he made them so funny as he was telling the stories. Everything was so wonderful and worthwhile. And the two of them, the life that they led together as friends, and of course Harvey's life. And when you go to the end of someone's life, you want to have the feeling of how worthwhile that existence was. Sure was. I don't know if I was that perceptive. I just knew it back then. I was enjoying it. But I mean, but then I've always been a fan of Laurel and Hardy, and so, but they were, it was definitely. Now here's another fine mess you've got me. It was that attitude that they had together, you know. When he shot himself with a needle as the dentist, that's probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen. At various functions, and at one point I went to a psychoanalyst once. And it was the same one he went to, and then I used to see the guy at his parties. I did go to parties at Harvey's house, and this guy was always there, and yeah, I don't know. You just see each other. But it's usually, especially for us now living here in the desert, it's hard to really be a part of the, dinners, going to dinners. But we do. Once in a while we get in the car and we go up and just to have dinner with friends. And one time we had to turn around and come back because the storm was so bad we couldn't get through. But it's difficult, but it's fun, I miss all those times. Lyle was really a wonderful sketch performer. He did it all very well. He was a perfect straight man, and sometimes very funny, and a great announcer. He was perfect. I also knew Vicki, but Vicki wasn't. She was just a friend. She wasn't doing anything when I was doing the show. She was sitting there knitting things, and she didn't say she was an actress. She did. They were just friends, and suddenly she started doing things. Yeah, that's pretty good. And she wound up being a star. During rehearsal, we're always around waiting to be called for your song or your sketch. And this is not about what we're talking about, but on the Red Skelton show, Red there was a run-through before dress rehearsal. And it was either dress rehearsal or run-through. No, because dress rehearsal had an audience. The run-through with no audience was called the Dirty Hour. And he would just say preposterous, double entendre things, and he just loved doing it. And there was Sam over there, and Sam was also working on her show. And Sam was the what do you call it? He would watch the script and make sure that everything was kosher. So you would get so used to laughing at dirty jokes, and that when you went on the air, and there were no laughs like you were getting with the crew, I once Red had you won't use this, but Red had an elderly gentleman that was on every show. Great character guy. And so we were doing a Western sketch. And we had a stagecoach on there. And I said to Red, this is how Red loved to do these things. He'd do anything. He said, Red, why don't you do this? Why don't you have the guy go in the back, open the back door of the coach, and go in, come out the other side, go around the front, go back and come through again, come out the front, go around the front, and just as he's about to do it for the third time, you'll say, what are you doing? So he did, and the punchline was, just going through a stage, okay? He used it. It was on the air. He never said, we're going to use this. I just suddenly realized, it's on the air. I wrote a sketch, you know. People always contributed. And that changed a lot over the years. The writers of today, they don't, I mean, their stuff is written in stone. They wanted, I remember I wrote a story on the Love Boat, and I made my entrance to get on the ship, and Julie, the cruise director, said, my picture was there, and she looked at the picture, and then she looked at me, she said, "It's you." And I said, "Gesundheit." So, yeah, corny joke, but they got, "No, you can't, Jack, we're the writers." It was in though, it stayed in. If shows were like the Carol Burnett show, there would be more variety television, and because they very rarely, I mean, they would learn their lines, and then once they learned their lines, then they could deviate from them, and it became funny. But you can't do that when you're reading. It was extremely enjoyable because everybody was having a good time, and that was the whole reason we were there. It wasn't, now look, we got to get this done, this is serious. It was like, hey, this is playtime. And that's why that show was so infectious. And I did a show, I did a guest shot on the show, and well, I'll see what it was. It was of a good friend I made from that show, Paul Kreppel. I don't know if you know him, but it was a show called It's a Living. And it was a very funny show. They made it work, but it was done without an audience. And we did learn our lines. It wasn't, you know. So, but the frustrating thing was that during all the rehearsals and then the run-throughs and whatever, and they had a long set, and the camera just kept rolling down and going into the next set, and like one long stage that went along. And the writers would follow the camera and would laugh at their own jokes. And you got used to the laughs. And there were 3 or 4 of them, but there were laughs. So now we're gonna shoot it, and no laughs. And you just have to imagine there are no laughs here, you know. So, but it still was funny. It worked great. I did a lot of Dean Martin shows, so one of them, they asked me to come in and do the finale, and there were about 3 other people, stars in the finale. And then I had to go to Vietnam with Bob Hope, and then when I came back, I was going to do my spot, and they were going to insert my songs. But this audience had not seen me before the finale, and that had bothered me. I said, "Dean, can you do me a favor? Can you just tell the audience what the heck I'm doing here?" All of a sudden, I show up. I don't know why it didn't matter. It was just me. So he said, "Well, certainly, Pally." So he gets out there and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, my pal Jack Jones. He wants you to know that he's doing his finale, yeah, and he's going to shoot his main spot on this particular show if he gets back from Vietnam." That was him. He was just a naughty boy. Jonathan Winters. He had his own show for a short time, and I was a guest on that. But we were friends. I went to Japan with him. We were guest stars on the Danny Thomas show. And again, being on location and going to various little towns in Japan was really interesting back then. But he was the most reactive performer of all. He made everything funny. And it's wonderful for you too, boys and girls. You know, he was just always, a new voice was coming out. He couldn't stop himself. And I have a video I shot of him in a gala evening after a tennis match that we were all involved in years ago. And I had my camera and I shot the whole thing. I have it somewhere. And it was just all ad lib, just all off the top of his head. So that's another performer that television misses. There were quite a few people who were accessible, but the whole trick is not to be too accessible. And then if you are, then there's no mystique anymore. Somebody just recently said, a performer, and I can't remember who it was saying about another performer, he gave too much away. And unfortunately, that's part of this business. If you're too easy to find, and no one's wondering where you are and what you're doing, they just know and oh, that's good old so and so. Then it doesn't help. But you cannot be the kind of star. Listen to me. I'm teaching you how to be a star. You cannot be the kind of star that you could be back in those days because you have to be in front of the cameras. You have to be visible. Otherwise, next, music. People are finding my music. Younger people probably wouldn't have ever known who I was, the way things were set up in the old days, are finding me on YouTube. And my wife, it became obvious to both Eleanor and myself what was going on, and now it's even more. So many more things people, I don't know where they get them, they put them up on YouTube. And they don't mean to put anything bad up there, and they don't. It's usually good stuff. But we're in a hotel, and there were two flight attendants, German flight attendants, speaking German. My wife happens to be Polish German, and so she understood what they were saying, and they were talking about, my name was mentioned. And why I couldn't understand my name in German, I don't know. It's still Jack Jones. But anyway, so she said, you mentioned my husband's name. That is Jack Jones. And she said, yes. Well, we love him. We have his records. Now, they were 22 years old, 23. And I couldn't figure it out. So I signed an autograph for them. And I said, wait a minute, now if this is going to go on, people are discovering me and they're that young, I'm going to have to go on stage with a bag over my head. So the stage actor is extremely disciplined. And if you watch any of those behind the actor studio shows, you can see how well trained and how serious they were about what they're doing. But at the same time, there's a movie out now that I found fascinating because it poked fun at the super seriousness and super self-awareness of the New York stage actor, and that's Birdman. He was a fan of mine for some reason, and he wanted the song and he wanted me to sing it, and then when we met, I flew to Boston to do this thing, and we went in the studio and recorded the song. I've got your number, and before we recorded, we spent 3 hours talking and laughing, and then I met Amy. I mean, very unaffected, very, very hardworking, serious actors, but good people. Bradley Cooper is another one that is, and I watched an interview he did on Actor Studio, and after I got to know him, and then I went, oh, oh, no wonder. He's really cool. He's just one of the most industrious, caring actors. His goal is to be better than 5 minutes ago, and he works so hard at it. He has a woman from the Actors Studio who he never does anything without going to her and working through it. And she's brilliant, but his caring for what he does. And so anyways, I'd known him at the Palm Springs Film Festival, and I knew him during the show. You know, it's quite something. Paul Williams called me and said, we're doing a show. Charlie Fox and I have written the theme song, and he made the call, and I said, well, I would very much like to do that. That'd be fine. And what is it again? It's a show about the Love Boat, about the cruise industry, cruise ship industry. And I said, well, great, count me in. And I want to wish you a lot of luck. I don't know anybody's going to watch a show about a cruise ship. So I'm always having a great vision. We just did a reunion of 50 years of Princess Cruises in Florida, and went down and I sang on deck, and the whole cast was up there, and a lot of the people that were guest stars on there. We had a great time, and it was well publicized. Carol, it's been a pleasure talking about you today. It really has. And I want you to know I don't go anywhere without your picture in my back pocket.